Hi everybody, so today we are going to have a fun little quick sewing project that you can whip up pretty fast. So today we're going to be making book sleeves. So all these is little pockets of fabric that you can slide your books into to protect them when you're like traveling, or if you want to stick it in your backpack or your bag or anything. This way, if you have like, this is a hardback, but if you have like some soft cover books, they won't get damaged in your bags. These have been really popular lately in the reading community, so I figured I would go ahead and show you guys how to make these. They're actually super simple, so let's just jump right into this. So the first thing you're going to need for this is two different types of fabric. Today I'm going to be using this pink deer fabric as the outer part. I'm going to be using this dark pink fabric as the lining for the new book sleeve. So this is the book sleeve that was holding this book. It's just a standard hardcover book. It's kind of small, 300 pages. This sleeve here, I cut the fabric out to be 8 by 10, and that was big enough to hold a standard hardcover book that's kind of small, or like a regular 6 by 9 book. This would probably be a smaller version. What you want to do when you cut out your fabric is you want to measure the book as well as the thickness of the book, and you want to add about an inch to that, or you want to add about 2 inches to that. A standard book is usually 6 by 9, and I cut out the fabric to be 8 by 10, and that fits pretty much any kind of standard small paperback. However, I do have a thicker hardcover. This is about a 600-page book, and it will not fit into this smaller sleeve. So I went ahead and I cut these pieces of fabric out to 10 by 12, and this will be more than enough to fit this thicker book. It is about 2 inches thick, so I added an extra 2 inches to this measurement than I did to this measurement. That way it'll be able to house larger books, and it also has enough for the seam allowance. So basically, whatever book you're going to be using these sleeves for, you want to measure the book and add like a 1/4 inch to that, just so you have some room for the book, and make sure if you have a thicker book to measure the spine, so you know how much to add there. But after you figure that out, you're also going to want to cut out some pieces of fusible fleece. So this is just some Pellon fusible fleece. It is only one-sided fusible. You don't want to use two-sided, just because we're only going to be fusing this to the exterior pieces of fabric, so you only need 2 sheets of this, and these are cut out 8 by 10, that way they don't get in the way of the seam allowance, and I just had them left over from when I was making the smaller version, so I didn't feel like cutting out more. But if you're going to cut out fresh pieces of fleece, I would just cut it out to be 1/2 inch shorter. So that's 10 by 12. You want to cut these pieces out to be 9.5 by 11.5, if that makes sense, just so you have room to stitch. So we're going to go ahead and I'm going to start ironing my fusible fleece to my exterior panels. I'm going to give it a once over with the iron just to make sure that the fabric has no wrinkles in it. And then I'm going to go ahead, and since this is fuzzy on this side, I don't like to iron on that side, so what I'll do is I'll lay the fusible fleece down. You want to make sure that the dots are facing up, like you can feel the difference. You can tell which side the glue is on. You want to make sure that side is facing up so that it sticks to your fabric. So I'm just going to go ahead and lay this down wrong side down on top of the fleece, and just try to make sure the fleece is kind of centered in your panel there. Now I'm just going to go ahead and press. Whatever kind of interfacing you buy, it will have instructions with it when you buy it, so you can just follow those instructions on how to attach it to your fabric. Pellon's pretty straightforward, so if you have any other kind of types, I don't know how those work, but this is how this works. It's just pretty simple. They want you to use no steam with your iron, I guess, so it the glue adheres better. But this fleece will just help your book sleeves to have a little bit more stability and be a little bit more cushioned, protecting of your book, rather than just having like a sack of fabric, because cotton isn't really thick or protective, so it just gives it a little bit more stability. Once you think it's good, you can go ahead and some parts might not be adhered quite as well. Just make sure you go over every inch of it a little while. Alright, and that should be good. And then you're just going to want to go ahead and do your other side, and we'll be good to go. Alright, you guys, so here I have my two exterior pieces which have the fleece ironed onto the other side, and I have my two pieces of lining fabric. So now we're just going to start pinning these. So we're going to start with one of the exterior panels and one of the interior pieces. And you're going to want to make sure that the shorter end is your top and the longer ends are your sides. If you have directional fabric like I do, which just means you have a pattern that needs to be a certain way, you're going to want to make sure it is the right side. That way we are going to be pinning and sewing along the top edge. So just make sure that your fabric is facing the correct way. Obviously I want my deers to appear like they're standing up, so this is how it's going to be oriented. So I'm going to go ahead and take one of my lining pieces, and you're just going to want to lay these down right sides together. And just kind of line them up like so. This is a solid fabric, so it doesn't really have a right or wrong side. But if you do have fabric that has a right or wrong side, make sure you're just keeping an eye on that and making sure you're putting right sides together. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm just going to pin across this top piece here. Just like that, and we're going to go ahead and just run a stitch along the top edge with a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Okay, so I went ahead and I just did a top stitch along both of my pieces here. So now my exterior fabric and lining are attached along the top seams. So I'm just going to go ahead and we're going to press these open. You're going to want to make sure you press towards the exterior piece, so this flap, that way it kind of lays more naturally when you go to close it later. So I'm going to go ahead and just do that. The direction you press it, you basically want it to appear like the exterior piece is overlapping the interior piece, just so it falls more naturally later on. So, yep. So I'm just going to go ahead and repeat this step to the other panel piece. Okay, now that we have our seams pressed, we're going to go ahead and take these two panels, and I'm going to lay this one down face up. And I'm going to lay this one down on top of it, right sides together, face down. Just make sure that your lining and exterior fabric line up. Okay, and what we're going to do is we're going to pin all the way around this perimeter here, except on the lining. We're going to leave a small gap on the top. That way we can turn it inside out once we're done. So I'm going to go ahead and pin all the way around this. Make sure your seams line up on the sides. I just want to check and make sure that they're lining up nicely. That's probably the first ones you actually want to pin. And then I like to just move to the corners and pin those just so I have like a nice foundation. Alright you guys, so I finished sewing all the way around this piece here. So you're going to want to go ahead and just reach in to the little hole we left, and we're going to just flip our book covers to the right side. And just make sure you really push out the corners, just to make sure it's all nice and crisp. Usually you can just stick your fingers through the corners and poke them out. If you want them to be a little bit more crisp, you can use like a pencil or like a pen or something. Just make sure you have a cap on it, or you can use like a toothpick, or they make special things for that. But yeah, now you're gonna have something that just looks like this. We're almost done. Along the top you are gonna have this raw edge, so you're just gonna wanna kind of fold the raw edges inside. And I'm just gonna finger press it. You can press it with an iron if you want to, but you don't have to. And then I'm just gonna pin this in place, and I'm just gonna do a little top stitch along this edge here to close off that hole. Alright, so once you do that, it's going to end up looking something like this. You just have a stitch there, but no more hole. So now I'm going to go ahead and we are going to just tuck the lining inside of our book sleeve here. And there we go. Now I'm going to go ahead and take this to the iron, and I'm just going to give it a little press along this top seam here. We're going to give it a top stitch just so it stays together better and it's not like, just to give it a more finished look. But we're almost done, so yay. Okay, so I just gave the whole thing a once over with the iron, and I pressed this seam down on the top here. I put a few pins just so the thing doesn't shift as I'm top stitching. But I'm going to go ahead and top stitch this. I did take the piece off my sewing machine so that I can fit it around there. So I'm going to start in a side seam just so that we hide that little beginning stitch. Alright, so we got a nice top stitch along the top edge there. And that's pretty much it, you guys. Your book sleeve is all done. Okay, that is all for this video, and it does hold this larger hardcover book, which is exactly what I needed this for. It fits perfectly, so that's great. But I hope you guys enjoyed this video. This is a very beginner-friendly sewing project, so if you're just starting out with sewing and you maybe don't have the best skills yet, this is definitely a good project to start out. It's super fast, super easy. It's literally just cutting out rectangles and sewing them together using straight stitches. Nothing too complicated. So if you're getting started out with sewing and you maybe want to practice your machine or whatever, you can definitely whip one of these up super fast. These are great projects for beginners. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video and have fun protecting your books. Yeah, if you guys make these, let me know in the comments down below what you thought, and I'll see you in my next video. Be sure to subscribe if you want to see more sewing and craft related videos, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!